Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Stakeholder-Centered Coaching, where we believe everyone deserves a stakeholder-centered leader. Today is November 22nd, 2024, coming up on the end of the year and a festive holiday week coming up. It's exactly 8 a.m. here in the Pacific Northwest on Pacific time zone. We are thrilled to have you all. Today is the second episode of Conversations with Coaches Season 4. Today, we're diving into a topic that resonates with so many professionals seeking greater purpose and impact in their careers. The journey from corporate to coach and life after corporate with executive coaching as a career is a very important topic to discuss. Transitioning from this structured world of corporate roles where there's known quantities, known teams, big budgets, to the dynamic, people-focused realm of executive coaching is non-trivial, to say the least. It's a journey of transformation. It's one that blends the skills and experiences gained in the corporate environment, paired with the passion and the people focus, the purpose required to guide others to success. So in this episode, we'll be exploring what it takes to make this leap, the challenges and rewards along the way, and the insights that can help you decide if coaching is the right next step for your career. Whether you're curious about the process or you're actively considering it yourself, you'll gain valuable perspectives from those who have walked this path before. Now, as we get started, I want to send some well wishes to our friend Ian Dix, who is scheduled to be one of our guests today and unfortunately fell ill in the past 48 hours. He will not be joining us, but we are here with our esteemed guest, Martin Buckley. So let me give you a brief introduction and we'll bring him all on up. Martin has had an extensive 28-year corporate career where he spent about 70% of it serving at Nike, including roles as vice president and the GM of global soccer. If you are a soccer fan, he's definitely someone you're going to want to connect and chit chat with. He's also certified. He's a certified management accountant. He's certified with SHRM and with Hogan for their assessments. And he's also a certified stakeholder-centered coach. Through it all, he's remained a family man, now with 3 adult sons in university. His pivot into the industry is done with close friend and fellow SEC coach Fergal Moorhead, where they've founded Buckley Moorhead Consulting and Coaching here in Portland, Oregon. He has agreed to come and share his expertise navigating this recent transition, and you can find more about him at the link on screen, buckleymoorhead.com. So I encourage you to join us in the chat and join me in welcoming Martin Buckley. Martin, thank you so much for being here today.
Brandon, thank you so much for the introduction. I have been called many things in my life, but esteemed is not one of them. So you're starting my morning in a very positive way. And a huge thanks to yourself, Diana and Maria, for giving us this opportunity. I'm really excited to be here with you today.
Beautiful. Well, thank you, Martin. And yes, big shout out to, I want to tell everyone, coming and facilitating these is a real blast. This is frankly the easiest part of the whole process. The ability to do these sessions is facilitated by a number of individuals who work in the shadows, but who are the real stars in bringing this together. So specifically, we want to call out Diana Padron and Maria Heredia, who are here working to put all of this together. So thank you both so very much. Now, Martin, this is just such a massive topic, and there's so much to really get through. So as we do this, ladies and gentlemen at home, I want to invite you to drop some of your questions in the chat. This is a big topic, and we've only got so many questions prepared. If there are directions you'd like the conversation to go, or if there are particular curiosities you have, drop them in the chat and we'll be doing our best to field these in real time. Now, Martin, let's just start right at the top. So you are working as an executive, and somewhere along the way, you must have gotten this itch to become a coach, or this interest in it. Tell us a little bit about what you were doing before, and then what really got you starting to think about coaching?
Yeah, so I've played sport my whole life, Brandon, as well. Played semi-professional soccer in Ireland and represented my country at a student level. And I've always been fascinated by the impact a coach can have on a team. So I took that into my business career. And as you mentioned, I had an extensive career at Nike. Before that, I was with Doc Martens here in Portland, and before that in public accounting back in Ireland. Post Nike, I had a little bit of time out to think about what I wanted to do next. I took on coaching an ex-colleague pro bono and really learned through that process. I had some different ideas and different things I wanted to test around discovering, going deep on discovery, ideation, and then helping her on her growth path. I took on two more corporate roles post Nike, one with JCB Packaging here in Portland, and then another one down in Scottsdale, Arizona, with PXG, the golf company. But I really, after all of that ended, I really wanted to take a step back to really map out where I wanted to go into the future. And I always loved the people development piece of the leadership roles that I had. But when you're in the corporate world, as you mentioned earlier, you have so many competing priorities. And I always felt I could do a much better job if the coaching, the leadership, the people development piece was the sole priority. So I've gone, as you mentioned, on and got certified in SHRM. I've gone and done Hogan assessments to help on the deep discovery piece. And then Fergal brought me stakeholder-centered coaching and the Marshall Goldsmith way of doing things. And I fell in love with the stakeholder-centered coaching approach. I've had a great time with Jayton, with yourself, with Michael Beale. You guys have been so embracing. And I'm really excited about where we're trying to go with Buckley Moorhead. There's challenges along the way, and we'll come across those as we get into the conversations around client acquisition and getting your name out there, and maybe some of the assumptions I had that bringing my experience and my passion for people development would open more doors than have currently opened. But that's okay. It's a challenge and it's a road, and we're on the road, and we're really enjoying it so far. So.
Now, you've made this transition, and I think it was relatively recently in the past 12 or so months.
Yeah.
Was there anything that sort of, let's say, a tipping point that helped you to say, I'm now fully inspired to leave the corporate world and go to become a coach?
Yeah, myself and Fergal started meeting up on Saturdays, and through our conversations, we found a mutual love and desire for helping people get better. We both had a desire to own our own business. We both felt we were at our best when we were in uncharted waters, and we both wanted to own our own business. And the fact that he was willing to come on the journey was a big tipping point for me, because I wasn't sure I wanted to do this or I could do this alone. And to have somebody as a partner with his background as a chief people officer at Zook and through his experience at Intel, I really felt their experiences complemented each other. So to have somebody to walk through this journey with, somebody who you trust, somebody who is very honest and very straightforward, that was a huge tipping point for me. And we enjoy each other's company. We're very different. We're driven by different things. And I like the complementary piece of that. Fergal got us in touch with Dean Miles, who's a coach, and Lance LeBlanc. And I love their dynamic and how they were working their way through it. And then Mike Tarbell, an old friend of mine from Nike, he's with Playbooks Consulting here in town. I sat down with Mike and picked his brain, and he was very willing to share a lot of stuff. So the partnership with Fergal, and then going and doing a little bit of research myself, combined with my desire to do something new and different and really help people and share my knowledge and experience, that's really what drove me down this path.
Now, I see a question that's come in from, where did this go? Maria Saralieva. Boy, I hope I'm somewhat close. Yes, we've got your questions. Actually, one of your questions is queued up next, so I'm happy you're here. This next question, Martin, is about actually making the transition. Mm-hmm. Making this transition requires quite a significant shift in mindset, I would say. I think that's a fairly agreeable thing.
Understatement.
Understatement. When you think about I kind of want to unpack, what are the drivers of this change? What is it that you see as this shift in mindset? And sort of what insights can you give us having made this transition successfully?
Yeah, I go back to Brandon, when you're leading a team, a big global team, I find you're skimming, because you've limited time, you're skimming across the opportunities and challenges because you're managing product and marketing and human resources and strategy and everything related to that. So to transition out of that mindset where you have a broad mindset to going very narrow on helping people and developing people, that was one of the initiators of this journey for me. And to own my own business was another one. To be an entrepreneur was another one. So I felt that I could add so much value to people with the experience I had and with the partner I had beside me to really help them on their journey. You've got to realize, when you're going from stability, you're going from a salary and bonus and stock options and things like that into a lot of uncertainty. And you've really got to be ready for that and not really under immense pressure to deliver results quickly. So we're playing a little bit of a long game. We're planting a lot of seeds right now. We do have some clients that we're working with, but we're in this for the long haul, and we really feel that the moves we're making today will pay off down the road, both in terms of helping people, but also in terms of the rewards that may come with that.
You mentioned entrepreneurialism, and that's something I think I see many coaches coming into this space very excited to focus on people without realizing 85% of your time is actually going to be focused on business. Was there anything that surprised you about becoming an entrepreneur the way that you've done in this people service space?
Massive eye opener, Brandon, and I'm smiling here because despite all the experience that I did have, I came into this with the same mindset that you just said of, hey, we're going to help people, we're going to move forward, we're going to be great, and put our experience together. And then you realize we've got to get a bank set up, we've got to get a name. And while our name doesn't sound super original, we did try many other names connected back to Ireland. And when we went to get the web domain for that, it would have cost a lot of money and we didn't want to invest that. So you learn all these things as you go, and it takes you further and further from actually coaching and getting out and meeting people. You go to the bank and get a bank set up, you have web development. All this takes time. And that's why I said earlier, you really have to be at a point where you can invest in this and not expect to just flick a switch and start helping people and earning money. There's so many other things to go. Our color scheme that we used, there's a nice story around our coat of arms, the Moorhead coat of arms from Ireland and the Buckley, and the blue is from his and the gold. I love that sort of stuff, but that takes time. And luckily I have a partner with me who gives his opinion, and then we agree quickly. I can only imagine if you had somebody beside you that you're debating and arguing everything all the time, it just slows the whole process down. But I love that you asked that question, because for me, this was a huge eye opener. And then you're reconciling the bank. So I'm pulling in some of my finance experience. We're pulling in Fergal's HR experience. We're balancing everything all the time while you're trying to acquire clients, while you're trying to get the brand name and recognition out there. So I'm smiling. I just thinking back to some of our stories. So.
Yeah, it's almost enough to give you a bit of whiplash. I think that it's I kind of want to talk about the hard things when executives come and ask, should I become a coach? My answer is no. This is a pretty tough field. It's very competitive, and very few are able to rise to the top. So getting into this, but again, those that do have some exceptional skills and have some exceptional experience behind them, like yourself. So I want to talk about the hard part of, when you are an executive, you sort of say, here's where we're going to go, here's what we're going to do. And it happens when you transition into being a coach, you do all of those things. You do the business registration, you pay the taxes, you pick out the color scheme. In your experience, what have been, say, the most challenging 1, 2, or maybe 3 things that you have had to actually do by yourself that you never would have considered when you were staring down the path of becoming a coach?
Again, I'm smiling. Web development is not my expertise, not my forte. And as you said, as an executive, you get used to directing and leading and creating direction, but a lot of other people are actually picking up the ball and running with it, and you don't go deep. That goes back to the skimming conversation. So web development, I've learned enough about that to be dangerous. The marketing and branding, I knew fairly well. The finance piece, I had to dig right back into my public accounting days from Ireland to start reconciling bank statements and things like that again. So all of that has been great learning. But Brandon, I think that the most interesting learning I've had on this journey, and I'll tell just a little story. I happened to be talking to a company on the East Coast, interviewing with them over a year ago, and the interview process ended. They really wanted a leader on the East Coast, and I didn't want to move, and one thing and another. But at the end of the interview process, I asked them, would they be interested in listening to a pitch for me to come in as a coach? And they got excited. They said, yeah, wow, that'd be great. We'd love to hear your pitch. And I thought, great, this is getting us ahead of the curve on this business idea, and we'll test the water. So I set up a meeting, and when I set up a meeting as an executive, people typically would show up. I set up a meeting. At the last minute, it got cancelled, and then I went on this 2-month journey trying to track them down again. And I'm pretty competitive, and I took it as a challenge to try and get that meeting. And I finally got the meeting. I did the pitch, and our coaching philosophies were in two totally different places. Myself and Fergal are much more on the progressive development of people. Theirs was a little bit on the back end as people were struggling in their company. But I sent a thank you note. I sent the deck that I had presented, and I've never heard anything back from the company. So I tell this story because if you don't have resilience, or you can't smile, or you can't park your ego, this space might not be for you, because you've got to go from where people are setting up meetings with you and you're the center of attention to actually you now need them more than they need you. And I like to tell that story because I get fired up by those stories to keep proving myself, but some people probably will not, and the rejection is hard to take. So that's been a huge learning.
It's tough. It's a very tough switch. So let's thinking about the storyline. You're working in corporate. You get this inkling that maybe coaching is the way to go. It's a tough decision. It's ambiguous, and there's no clear finish line. How did you know when it was the right time? Was there any signals? Was there any indicators? What could the people who are listening look for to know for themselves that it's the right time?
Yeah, I think I analyze things with my head, my heart, and my gut. So from a head standpoint, could I financially sustain our life while I took a chance on this, and while I explored this? Did I have a partner to do this with, which I found, which was great. Your heart, is your passion really in this? I know I'm at my best when I'm extremely passionate about things. And I did a lot of soul searching on, is this really what I want to do? And is this the next step? And then the guts part goes back to what I just said, the perseverance, or the fight, or you've mentioned it many times. It's not an easy field to break into, and you're knocking on doors, and people that once reported to you aren't replying to your emails or texts because you need them now. Are you up for that? Or is that a challenge for you? Does that excite you? And I put all those things together, and I came out of it and said, yeah, let's go. I've always wanted, as a little kid in Ireland, I wanted to own my own business, and I explored some franchise models, and doing a doggy daycare service or a blind service didn't float my boat. It wasn't what I wanted to do. I wanted to be closer to people development, running my own show, working with a partner to move things forward, and really bringing value to clients as we found them, or as we worked with them.
It's difficult to think about you spending your time running a doggy daycare. That just...
Even though I love dogs, don't get me wrong, we've a beautiful dog here. I had a hard time with that one too, Brandon. And there were some other interesting franchise, but I think to take the step back, like I've said earlier, and explore these things. This franchise ownership is one way of owning a business. It just didn't float my boat. It might float other people's. It might be a safer model than actually diving all in on your own. But I learned, and I'm a curious learner. So I learned about blind management. I'm not the greatest around the house DIY. So my wife had a good chuckle at that one, thinking of me hanging up blinds or helping people with blinds. But anyway, I ended up in a good place. I digress. So.
I like it. I want to call attention here to a question from Renu, who said, what is one thing you would do differently if you had the chance during this transition? Martin?
Yeah, I think, and myself and Fergal chatted about this earlier this week. I think we were a little presumptuous that you put our experience together, you put our brand together, you put our passion for people development together. I think we expected things to happen rather than actually developing a very disciplined approach to chasing down clients, getting our brand recognized, and getting on a more regular meeting cadence, which we're on now in terms of staff. So there's some things you could carry over from the corporate world that we pulled away from too fast. So I think that is definitely one. And I think as you're moving into this transition, if it's where you want to be, is get your network activated earlier than we probably did. Like a lot of people in the corporate world, you're so busy, you're doing things and you're looking at what's right in front of you. You don't overly think about your network. I look back now on my time at Nike, and I should have kept my network outside of Nike much more active and alive. And I owned that, and I didn't do it. So they would be two pieces of advice. Keep your network alive and get disciplined a little bit more quicker than myself and Fergal did.
Beautiful. There was another question in here that I wanted to bring up on the back of what you said. This comes from Mahim, who said, how do you plan and develop skills into coaching while you're in the corporate job? Now, Martin, I think you made a hard transition. You didn't make the decision, stick around for 2 years and then transition, correct?
Yes. Yeah. And there were circumstances happened as well that enabled that. So
if you had a third partner who came along and was still in their corporate job, said, I intend to leave in 18 to 24 months, what can I do now so that I'm fully prepared to join you as a fully upskilled coach? What suggestions would you have for them?
Yeah, I wish I discovered stakeholder-centered coaching earlier. I think as you're in the corporate world, companies invest a lot in training and development. You can pitch to do training and development in this space because it's relevant for your leadership of your team, which can then translate into outside. And I think that's where Fergal actually utilized his company to help him progress into stakeholder-centered coaching. So use the tools and resources you have in the corporate world. You can practice your skills as well in the corporate world, and it can soften the transition as you move forward. But I'm a big believer in educating yourself, in developing your tools and skills and using what's right in front of you. Companies have massive budgets. They invest in training and development. You could work with a coach as well, potentially, and learn from them as they come in to help you on your transition. But I think use what's right in front of you has always been good advice I've received.
Good. I'll bring up also our friend Dan Sintner has commented, when transitioning to coaching, give yourself a runway. On average, it takes 3 years of hard work before coaching begins to earn a sustainable income. Dan, I think I could not agree more. I might even broaden that window to 3 to 5 if you're working especially hard and smart. It's a tough transition. And as you make that transition and you're preparing for it, how do you start the process of announcing to the world, like, hey, I'm a coach. You can now bring me in to essentially have me in your corporate pocket to pull out and help you be a better leader anytime you need. How do you start advertising and promoting that as a service?
Yeah, when we had the website finally up and ready to go on July 1st, we got a big announcement out to our LinkedIn network, which communicated to everybody that we knew that we were now in the coaching and consulting space. There is a consulting arm to our business too, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. Word of mouth, everyone you meet, the first couple of words out of your mouth should be, yes, I'm now a coach, or I'm working on being a coach, or I can help you in your space as a coach. And I think they're the two methods we're using right now. We're going to a lot of networking events, whether it's through Charm, whether it's through other networks. We're a part of the Irish network here in town, and we've reset ourselves in people's minds that we are now in coaching, and we've had some nice referrals related to that, and a lot of positivity. Oh, that's great. I see that. I could see how you could help, and I could see you in that space. So word of mouth, obviously social media. There's a lot of, I think Brandon does a phenomenal job of communicating regularly with the audience, that on different topics. We've got to get better at that. That's a journey we've got to take down the road. Content like this, that you're sharing that with people, and you're explaining what you're about and where you're going. So they're all the different tools I think you can use. But I think word of mouth and activating your network as well is where we've got some of our business so far.
Well, let's hang on to this transition piece for just a moment, because there's a question here from Janet that's not going to fully fit. But Janet says she has two friends who are VPs and considering retirement. Both of them are thinking traditionally about retirement, but they have such impressive skills that Janet sort of wants to encourage them to consider a different perspective of retirement, going off and helping people. She asked, what advice would you offer them to help them reconsider? I would sort of ask you first is, would someone outside of yourself's advice have had any impact on the speed with which you made the transition? And if so, what could someone have said to you to make you think, yeah, actually, I've got some very commercializable skills I can use in retirement?
Yeah, I think the retirement journey a little bit different to mine, because I knew I wanted to keep going, and I just needed to find my new path. I would ask, are they really passionate about it? Because it's less about your experience, but it's more about, are you really passionate, and is this really what you want to do? And if the answer comes back as yes, then it's going on a journey of whether you want to do it with a partner, set up your own business, learning, development, all that sort of stuff. But somebody might see in you that you could be a great coach, or you have been a great coach for them. The big question becomes, do you really want to do this? Because as you've said many times, Brandon, it's a difficult path, a challenging path, a very rewarding path. And Dan just came in there, which you've got to be in this for the long run. So I would go back and ask, are they really passionate about it? And if they are, then you can figure out how you can be a great coach.
Well, we're seeing this question and sort of the thread of these questions coming in the chat here from Diana. She mentions not all executives are destined to become a coach. It really depends on the individual. What do you recommend to retiring executives to do to really determine if coaching is right for them? So there's this element of, do you really want to do this? Are you committed to doing this, to suffering at as Dan mentioned, for the first few years? Outside of sort of these conceptual, introspective questions, are there any external questions that you should be asking yourself about your personal life or your family or the world around you? What can you tell us?
Yeah. Again, Brandon, I keep coming back to, do you have the passion for this? Are you set up to do this? Do you want to do this? And can you transition from telling people and directing people what to do to actually listening and investigating and having more patience? I know my biggest challenge was I was so action orientated and so results driven that I have had to slow down immensely and learn how to ask the right questions. Can you do that? Can you go on that training? Are you open to continuous feedback or feed forward from people you're coaching? And some people are not, whether it's they just don't want to do that, or the ego might be in the way. You have to be vulnerable if you're going on this journey, especially if you want to be a great coach. And you've got to reach out to the great coaches and learn from them, and plug into a lot of the learning and the tools that are out there. So it's a real commitment. So passion, commitment, and are you willing to almost break yourself down to build yourself back up?
I think that's something that, say, an ethos that's taught in our coach training program when we talk about courage, humility, and discipline. For those who are unfamiliar, these are the prerequisites of a leader for stakeholder-centered coaching to work. You need to have the courage to try new things, to experiment. You need to have the discipline to follow the process. But when we zoom into humility, a big piece of that is acknowledging about 50% of what you know might be wrong.
Yeah.
And being willing to sort of discard that. It seems like there's quite a lot of, let's say, rewriting of your brain that is required to make this pivot. Would you agree with that statement?
I totally agree with that. And you play out, a leader comes to you and you've had feedback on them, you want to help them, but you're so action orientated and results driven that you're not really going deep as to what is the root cause of the issue. And you've just nailed it on the head. As you go into coaching, you're trying to get to the root cause so that you can work on the opportunities or challenges that are really going to move that person forward. When you have them on your team, you've got many more people on your team, you've got results to drive, you've got product innovation, you've got all sorts of things going on, and you end up not going as deep as you should or you need to. And at this journey that I'm enjoying is that I get to spend the time with people I'm coaching, I get to go deep, I get to learn about them, and then you can actually help them move forward on their journey.
Good. Well, we'll move from the topic sort of the transition itself and talk about what really happens on the other side. And I want to call out a few comments here about what it means to actually get started, and thinking specifically about the business side of things, because that really is a very difficult spot. Dan has mentioned building a bridge to coaching through your current employer is a great strategy for getting started, which I think many others in the comments tended to agree with. We had a comment from Dr. Shane, who said earlier of the dialogue that not everyone's cut out to be a corporate coach. She said it will take 5 to 7 years to become qualified, and that 0, she clarified, was a dash. Mm-hmm. So to tell everyone here, pace yourself. Understand This is not a fast piece. Jathan Janov here mentioned what I think answers some of the questions in the chat. What do you do first? What are your priorities? He mentioned one of the best development move I made after getting SEC certified was 2 no-fee SEC engagements. Huge, a huge thing to do. Martin, is this something, an approach that you've taken? Have you done pro bono work in coaching so that way you can get your reps, develop your reputation, anything of the sorts?
Yeah, so I had a leader from Nike reached out to me on my post-Nike journey, and she asked me to coach her. She had been on my team, and we went on a Discover, Ideate, Grow journey. I had not engaged too deeply with stakeholder-centered coaching at the time, but I found the journey really rewarding, really fulfilling. But I did that pro bono. Her brother ended up helping us with our website, so we traded off some things we could help each other with. But I'm very proud that she was on a journey where her voice wasn't really being heard, and her leadership presence hadn't quite developed. And through the work we did together, and the coaching and digging in and really unlocking some of her potential and helping her use it, she's ended up getting a wonderful job in Italy now with the same company. They were blown away that she was investing herself in a coach, even though I wasn't getting paid for it, but they were blown away. She was investing her time and energy. We showed them what we were working on, and they promoted her into a big marketing role with the company in Italy. And I'm very proud of that. We stay in touch. We touch base once a month, and that was pro bono. And I'm doing work with the Special Olympics as well. I'm coaching athletes. That's pro bono. It's a totally different level to executive coaching, but you learn all the way through it. You learn how to engage with people and what they need, and how simple you need to keep the message. So yes, I'm wide open to pro bono work as well, Brandon, to build up your portfolio and build up your reputation.
Wonderful. And I want to sort of build on this for a moment, because a couple questions have come through to both of us. And one of them I want to highlight here is the question, here we are. what are the successful coaches doing right? And I'll take the first whack at this on the back of what we just discussed with taking pro bono engagements. What I recommend, and this also is for anyone thinking to make this transition, what I see successful coaches doing right, especially coaches just starting out, is to take on pro bono work. And I always say the same thing. If you're a power lifter, you don't go to the powerlifting meet and pick the weight up for the first time. You get your reps in at home. You get your reps in at the gym. So that way, when you go for performance, you're doing something that you're very well equipped to do. You're not reading the book on how to do your lifts and then going to the meet and picking it up for the first time. And this is critical. My recommendation is always the same. Start with 3 pro bono engagements. Now, let me be very clear. Pro bono, in this case, doesn't mean free. It means I'm not going to take your money.
Yeah.
What I'm going to ask in return is a 250 to 500 word written testimonial. You'll come to a 60-minute webinar where I will interview you about your experience being coached. I can use this for my marketing later on. I can anonymize our mini survey and use that for my marketing, but coming up with some very specific deliverables that aren't financially incentivized, including giving referrals of people within your target market. This really primes the pump for a successful career. I think it can even shrink that 3 to 5 year window down to 6 to 18 months if you play your cards well. Now, that said, Martin, I've never made the transition from being an executive to becoming a full-time coach. So maybe it's not so relevant. In your experience, watching others make the same transition, what do you see them doing especially well?
Listen, I think it's exactly what you just said, Brandon, and I think they've been set up, whether it's financially or securely, that they can take their time to do this the right way, and you're not making short-term decisions just to put food on the table. That need is covered by your career. I think investing the time and the energy to build that long runway is really important. And if that's through pro bono, if that's actually taking on something that you're not seeing the benefit of it initially, but it might lead to something, being open to that. I recently got engaged with a small sport tech company from Ireland, and I did a bunch of work to help them get connected to people here, and that might lead to a coaching role with their CEO and a consulting role on their business, and that wasn't clear from the outset, but I was willing to go on the journey and help them, more about them than about me, and I'm assuming successful coaches have a similar mindset as they develop their business. So just be open and be curious that things can take you down a path that might surprise you.
Good. We have a question here from Diana. I want to quickly resolve for you. What is an SCC certified coach? This is sort of internal lingo. Diana, SCC is stakeholder centered coaching. It's the methodology that Martin employs as a coach. It is the company that I run. It is the methodology developed by Marshall Goldsmith. If you want to know more, every week this year, we're doing a free masterclass called Learn to Coach Like Marshall Goldsmith. We may have links on the screen here in a moment, but we can always drop that in the chat if you'd like to know more. I also saw Dan and one other, Fergal. Thank you for jumping in on the response. Yep, go ahead.
Brandon, you should tell Diana why we're all believers, disciples, proponents of stakeholder-centered coaching, why we all fell in love with stakeholder-centered coaching. This is your opportunity.
It is. I do this full time. I'm thrilled. Maybe we can say to everyone who's looking at you, Martin, saying, "How can I do this more like Martin?" Martin, what is it that led you to select stakeholder-centered coaching as your methodology of choice, and how has that affected sort of the business setup that you've been working on up to now?
Yeah, I fell in love with the philosophy of stakeholder-centered coaching because people are held accountable. The stakeholders are invested in the process, the coachees invested in the process, and the coach is invested in the process. And with the regular check-ins, the mini surveys, you stay aligned through the process if everybody does their work, if everybody follows up. So you don't have a coaching process that is secretive, that's just one-on-one. You're actually involving the people that matter in the person who's being coached life. And that's why I love it. And that's why I like the accountability of it. And that's why we practice it. And I've had a recent example where I went back to one or two of the stakeholders. We weren't making as much progress as we wanted with the coachee. We had a great conversation, and we realigned and sharpened the focus, and we all moved forward on the same page. And I love that. It means your time investment is a good investment.
Lovely. And, I would also want to call out the community, which I see as such a support. It's something specifically when I'm speaking with transitioning executives that I say, look, the methodology we essentially give away for free. Most of it's in the public domain. Mm-hmm. If you want a cogent linear training on it, we have it, but the community is really where value is added. So I'm going to hard pivot off of this because I'm happy to talk stakeholder-centered coaching anytime. You can reach out to me. Exactly how will come up in the chat or on the screen. But focusing specifically on this business development side of coaching is something that I'd like to get into. Ladies and gentlemen, there's so many questions. We're trying our best to see, where the story's leading us. But the first one I wanted to point out, we spoke a little bit earlier about how you start promoting. I wanted to call out Tom Moorhead here. He said, also consider being a sponsor of the networking events to get your brand and logo featured. And I love this because not only is Tom a friend, and Tom is a very effective coach and leader, he's also talking about getting your brand and logo featured. And here he is having his handle featured in this event. So kudos, Tom. I like the
Tom.
advice.
Yeah, thank you. That's a great advice. Yeah, that's great.
2 thumbs up. Everyone connect with Tom here in LinkedIn. I think that's a good one. So thinking about this, here we go. From Rosanna, how do you market yourself as a coach in consulting business? I've been a consultant for a long time and have had a hard time transitioning to coach, where it's more about, in both cases, you are the expert, whether you're a consultant or a coach. But as a consultant, you're telling, as a coach, you're asking. It's a tough change. How do you go about marketing tactically? Of course, there's channels, but tactically, what have you and Fergal done that's worked?
Yeah, I'll give an example of an interesting recent situation, Rosanna, where I've done work with the Irish Network. I'm on the board of the Irish Network, and we did work to accelerate growth between Ireland and Oregon. Believe it or not, Ireland is Oregon's 5th largest trading partner. A lot of that is semiconductors and Intel. But we did this work and we connected the IDA, Enterprise Ireland, they're the bodies from Ireland based in the US to drive business to Ireland and back and forth. And then the local entities in Portland, Greater Portland Inc., Business Development Oregon, the Port of Portland. So we brought all these people together, and this is separate to what coaching and consulting. But through the work I did on that, which again was pro bono, I had a connection with Enterprise Ireland, who reached out to me about 6 weeks ago and asked me to help this Irish company, and I mentioned this earlier, who were trying to grow their business in the US, and they needed some connections at Nike and some other people where I've got connections. And again, I took that on and I helped them. And then I've now connected really personally with the CEO, who's an up and coming CEO, who's an industrial designer, but now he's leading a large company and he needs a little bit of help understanding how to lead a large company, how to bring on the right people, how to grow the business. So I'm actually coaching him on a personal level on his development skills. And I'm also advising on his business to help him grow the business through some of the background I have. So I'm trying to play that balance that you talk about here in the question. So that's just an example of, we didn't really overly market or advertise, but through network and through connections, I still think that's where you get most of your business. We need to do a much better job on social media. We need to have a point of view as to what we stand for. We have a lot of work to do. We've only got going the last few months, and this is an area that we're grappling with as well. So I'm sorry I don't have all the answers, but staying connected to your network and activating the network and going on a journey that you're not, will take you potentially somewhere, has been very interesting for me. So
Here's a question that I think is very well worth taking some time to unpack, Martin. Again, it's not something I can speak to. How does transitioning from corporate leadership to executive coaching challenge your sense of identity? Let's start with that. How has it challenged your sense of identity, and has it?
I'm laughing. As I left Nike, I was recommended by a friend to read the book Ego is the Enemy. And Ego is the Enemy has been hugely helpful in reminding yourself that you're more than just what you used to do. And you own that identity. You own what you think that identity is, and you own how you move that identity forward. I'll be honest, your ego's deflated. You go through a personal transition when you're moving from these big jobs, but you get a chance to reset and recreate yourself. And I think that's the journey that I'm really embracing and I'm really enjoying at the moment. So you have all that corporate experience, you know what you've done, you have the relationships. It's now, can you recreate yourself in a new field? And musicians do it all the time. You have people in all sorts of other fields do it, where they take on a brand new space or a new thing. And I think that's how we grow as humans and individuals. My corporate experience to ignite transformation in others while redefining your own purpose. I think that connects to what I've just said. You take a step back, you reassess what makes you happy and what brings you joy in your life, and you project that forward. And for me, it was coaching. For me, I coached our college soccer team while I played back in the day, and I loved that. I loved helping people and pushing people different ways, and prodding. The same with when I led teams, I always put the team and the people first, and the belief that they are the ones who create all the goodness that comes in the business. And I think knowing that that's your identity and where your passion is, I think it comes from being one of 5 children growing up as a kid in Ireland, and you know, you're learning all the way through it. You're coaching and moving and shifting and adjusting, and you know, I emigrated here at 23 with a green card, my education and my dreams, and I've always kind of been okay with challenges and embracing new things. So that's what I'm trying to bring forward into the coaching space.
As you've made this this pivot, thinking about differentiation, in your opinion, what are 2 to 3 must-haves for coaches that they should have in order to differentiate themselves in what is becoming an increasingly crowded market?
Yeah, it's a tough question, to be quite honest, because I've talked with many coaches on this journey, and it's when you talk with them and you engage with them, you realize what they bring that's different. But how do you communicate that? How do you get that message out to a bigger audience? I recently chatted with a coach I had met, and she's more centered on helping women and women's voice in the corporate world, but it doesn't come across in any of her literature because she's afraid to go that specific, because it might not give her opportunities to serve other people. So this is a great question, and I'll be honest, I think I've always believed credentials can back you up, and the learning you get from that is important. But this is something we're grappling with ourselves. I have to be honest, is we have this unique experience when you combine myself and Fergal. We have certifications, we have a network, we have tools, and we're trying to figure out what is the sweet spot. But so if anyone else out there has answers to this question, I'd love to hear them myself.
Well, I'll input to this, because this is something that I do have a unique perspective on, given that when corporations call us for coaching, I have a fairly unique perspective, having led these dialogues. Something that almost never happens. I have not had a case where this occurred, is when a client calls and says, you know, what we really want is someone with 30 years of coaching experience. Yeah. Not usually a common request. We want someone with 25 years of business experience with, you know, a couple years of coaching or a coaching accreditation. But it's all about that experience. And you and Fergal, I mean, boy, what a great pairing of profiles. to be uniquely positioned. So I think the first piece of differentiation is having meaningful business experience. VP and GM at Nike, not such a bad profile. So that's a big piece. The second thing is having a very tangible, transparent service. Mm-hmm. When we think about coaching, it's opaque. It's a very opaque service proposition. I'm going to make you a better leader. I've got a fairly complex process. It's going to change day by day. We'll start each session with, what do you want to talk about today? And that's tough. It's as opaque as a legal service, as accounting. I'm going to do your taxes. You don't need to know how the sausage is made. But having something that's transparent. And to those asking about stakeholder-centered coaching, that's what we have. You're going to pick something to get better at, and who's going to notice and who should notice. We're going to ask those people to keep their eye out for the changes that I'm making. We're going to make an action plan based on their suggestions. I'm going to follow up monthly, and then I'm going to measure the changes. Very simple. It's a one-page project with the milestones, who's involved, where, what are the deliverables, what's being measured and reported into whom. Very simple. So having strong experience, having a known, or let's say a transparent service, and then I would say the third big piece is a no-brainer proposition, which Marshall pioneered with the no growth, no pay option. It works. I would say these are things that are especially attractive to organizations. And Renu, if you want to further dialogue on this, happy to do so. Martin, anything that you'd agree with or disagree with in there?
I'd agree with everything you said. To be honest with you said it perfectly. Business experience combination and bringing that, the service, and then the no-brainer proposition. That's simple. 1, 2, 3. Yeah.
Good. Oh boy, there are so many good questions in here.
Are we going into overtime, Brandon?
Well, maybe this is a good time to ask the audience if I know we're not going to touch on everyone's question, but if you wanted to see a part 2 of this, if you wanted to see a part 2 of from corporate to coach, let us know in the chat. We are stakeholder centered, which means you're our stakeholders. Tell us what it is you want, and we'll do our best to deliver. This is sort of a coaching question I want to flag up by our friend Bill Summers. The African proverb, beautiful. When an old person dies, a library burns. Leaders retire and in 6 months are looking to contribute. There's lots of knowledge and experience sort of centralized in these retirees. How do you engage their hearts and mind to help the leader and the organizations who need or want the coaching? Your thoughts?
I was going to ask you to start that one, Brandon. Knowing Bill.
Yeah. Well, Bill is a dear friend of many of us here in the room. The question is, how do you engage hearts and mind to help the leader and the organizations who need or want the coaching? I think it's basic change management. You need a great, big, fat, ugly, hairy, burning platform to say, is change actually necessary? Mm-hmm. And what happens if you don't? And as a coach, that's a pretty important case to be able to make. And for those of you who are asking about, I'm kind of a consultant, I'm kind of a coach, do both. Bring in your consulting analytical skills and look to establish, is there or is there not a very big need for coaching? And then use your coaching skills to build the path to that future perfect that says, here's what life could be like for you. Here's how long it will take to get there. And here's the requisite sacrifices. I'm here to support you. Are you ready to go? And I think in doing so, you are not only engaging the hearts by saying, look, here's the pain. Like, I'm pressing this button for you. If you have discomfort and I can solve it, there's a pretty strong business proposition there. And I think, Martin, that would probably be my response. I invite you and anyone else to chime in on it.
No, I agree with that. I'm playing out in my mind here Bill's scenario where people have lots of knowledge and experience, and how do you engage their hearts and mind? I go back to where we started a little bit of, they have to have the passion as well to want to engage. And the likes of stakeholder-centered coaching gives you a platform to engage in and follow, and a process to believe in. But I still come back to, you have to want to coach people and help them and learn from them and take them on a journey. I think that's really important. On top of what you've said, Brandon, I fully agree with what you've said.
Okay, Martin, I'm going to have two more questions here. We've got 6 minutes on the clock, but boy, there is a desire for more. So we'll be talking more offline on that.
Okay.
Mistakes. Everybody has, and if they haven't, they should be making some pretty big mistakes their first year or so. What big mistakes have you encountered, and what have you done to be particularly resilient towards them?
Yeah, I mentioned earlier a little bit, Brandon, around the discipline. We didn't realize how disciplined you needed to be to get this going. We were a little bit presumptuous, and we weren't disciplined enough, and we haven't been marketing ourselves hard enough as well. We invested a lot of money in training, whether that's SEC, whether that's Hogan Assessments, DISC, all that. We've invested a lot in training this year, and we probably need to recenter that around marketing going forward. So they'd be the big ones for me. We're getting along really well as a partnership. I hope Fergal would agree to that. So there haven't been any mistakes there. You have to run a disciplined process. You have to market yourself. You have to put yourself out there, and we can do better in all of those areas. And that's kind of the journey we're going forward. Are we happy with the bank we chose? Yes. Are we reasonably happy with the website we have as a representative of our brand? Yes. Are we happy enough with our branding and our collateral? Yes. But we realize we've got so much more to do, and they're the areas that we're focused on, rather than a massive mistake where we've invested so much in something that didn't work out. We haven't quite done that. So
yet.
Yeah. Hey, I'm with you. I'm a believer. You learn from these things. So, yeah.
I think.
Thank you for that.
It's feed forward. It's feed forward, given in love. Good. Well, look, I want to be in just a moment, Martin. I want to ask my final question, which is, what advice would you have for someone considering this career change? But as you're preparing that, I want to just quickly cycle through some of the incredible questions that we've got just cooking here, and questions that we will have queued for when we do part two. I will need to speak with Martin to see if he's up for part two or if we have a different guest. But boy, Martin, we'd love to have you back. We've got this question from Frank on, sort of experience coaching leaders under certain pressures. What skills, knowledge, experience are transferable? How do you measure the success of your coaching engagement? With which, Martin, I think that you're also very uniquely positioned to answer. How you continually enhance your coaching skills. Questions that neither you nor I are the best experts to answer, but is India a good country to start a career as a coach? We've got AI, another huge topic that we'd need to bring Michael Beale into and Grace Q to speak on, how AI is going to change the field. When you start as an executive coach, do you go with a niche or do you go broad? So, ladies and gentlemen, there's so many questions that have come in live. We've got so many questions that have been sent in advance that we'd like to cover. So join us next time as we do this. Martin, advice. I'm considering transitioning. What suggestions do you have for me?
I think my own journey has been step back to step forward, and really put thought into it across your financial situation, whether you really want to do this, and do you have the stomach for it? Do you have the resilience? Do you have the desire? Can you push through rejection? So I really think step back, think through head, heart, and guts, work your way through the process, and then you take your step forward or take a step away if this is not for you.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, those of you who are here joining with us live, go to your chat and please join me in thanking our guest, Martin Buckley, who's generously given his time to share his insights on a topic that seems to be very, very pertinent and very urgent. So, Martin, from the bottom of our hearts, thank you for being our guest today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me, Brandon, and thank you everybody for the engagement. This has been fun.
As all of you know, this is stakeholder-centered coaching, which means that we are always on the lookout for feedback and feed forward. What I'd like to ask you in return for this hour-long discussion with Martin is simply that you'd be willing to rate our performance and give us feedback. In just a moment, we'll bring a link on screen that you can follow to give that feedback. The other invitation I want to extend is the masterclass we are doing every week for the rest of the year called Learn to Coach Like Marshall Goldsmith. It is a 2-hour deep dive into stakeholder-centered coaching, the principles that underpin it, the definitions, the framework of coaching, as well as the findings on the efficacy and the practical implications you can use immediately for free forever. So this is a free masterclass we are doing, hopefully to make the world just a little bit better as part of our belief that everyone deserves a stakeholder-centered leader. You can join right here on screen, link.mgscc.net/learn to coach like Marshall Goldsmith, LTCLMG. November 26th will be our next session. So please join us for that. Other than that, the feedback form will come on. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being here today. Martin, thank you for being here today. This has been Stakeholder-Centered Coaching, where we believe everyone deserves a stakeholder-centered leader. We'll see you next time.